Houston has finally lost after all this time. Let's talk about that. So Houston versus Seattle, two air raid offenses is coming head to head. Some big air raid. You got June Jones and then you've got Wade Phillips. This game's going to be good. All right. Or so we thought. It's a good thing that this game was on at 10 o'clock at night when no one was watching FX. So the battle was pretty mid. There was a lot of turnovers. Houston had 2 sacks, 5 TFLs, holding DiNucci to a 6.5 yard average per throw attempt. Seattle, on the contrary, sacked Brandon Silvers 3 times. They had 4 TFLs and held a 44-point offense of Houston to only 14. So that's a 30-point, come down. Brandon went 25 on 47 on the night. Both run games were modest. 52 yards. Seattle, 52 yards for Houston, and then Seattle had 88 yards with Morgan Ellison having most of the carries on that night. So my takeaway here was it was a mediocre game, and I think Houston has more in their tank. But maybe you should try a little more with Cole McDonald in this. My concern was Brandon Silvers, who is a former Seattle Dragon, might have tanked this game. I'm not completely sure. Houston's playing DC next week, so hopefully this isn't a confidence stunner. Maybe it's a confidence booster. I'm not completely sure. Seattle, on the contrary, they're on a roll right now. They looked a little rough in that fourth quarter. They do have a little bit of trouble keeping games. Houston nearly rallied it back, but too little, too late. Seattle looked pretty okay. You want Ben DiNucci to be a little bit more smart with the football. I think we had like a combined 7 turnovers or something like that on the night. And that's not good for TV ratings. That's not good for fans. All in all, the XFL needs to get games off FX. They need to get back on like ESPN and ABC because the ratings have taken an absolute beating with all these games on FX. Like the USFL, they had a couple games on FX, but the XFL, just all of them are on FX. And the USFL, was on like FS1. Those were the bad ones. The next game we had was St. Louis versus DC. St. Louis showed up 35,000 people strong, and this was their first home game loss ever. I think we have a major rivalry forming between these two. Seattle and DC, 2 great fan bases, great for football. DC looks like a pro team now in its own right, like NFL level. The running game was just absolutely dominant. Abram Smith ran for a ridiculous 214 yards, I think. 218 yards. He looked absolutely dominant out there. Jordan Teamu didn't have to do that much with his arm, only going he went 12 for 19, so that's a pretty good, completion rate at that point. You had 248 total yards on just running. Defensively, they had 5 sacks, 4 TFLs, an interception from Michael Joseph. Poor St. Louis started off slow. They had 10 penalties on the night. A.J. McCarron went for 1 interception late in the game. He went 22 for 34 on the night, and they had 236 yards. Rushing, they had 98. They had 9 TFLs, but no sacks on the night. Overall, DC still looking good. St. Louis, I like what they were doing. I like how Coach Beck was coaching his team. And really, it came down to just that last-minute interception. Michael Joseph is the second highest in interceptions so far on the XFL season. He's got 4 right now. So all in all, DC, you're still going up. You're still getting better. Lucky Jackson's a good wide receiver, but when you can just run all over St. Louis, who looked sloppy with those 10 penalties, they had over 100 yards of penalties. There's no fight late in the game. The fan base was really, 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 really good in my opinion. So that's always good. And the commentators were just buttering up St. Louis left and right. It was a good crowd, and you can watch these games, and you're not like, oh, okay, where's where's the people? So all in all, great night. Derek King had a rushing touchdown. Abram Smith had 2 rushing. He set the XFL's longest rush twice. So he reset the record twice in that game. The first rushing touchdown he had that I showed you already was a 64-yard, and then the second one he bumped it up to 70 yards. AJ McCarron nearly led that fourth quarter comeback that they're known for with a beautiful dime down the field, and then they went for the 2-point conversion. So, I mean, it's still the same old Battlehawks that we see. I think that they're going to really have to put up a good fight against Seattle, and they've got to beat Seattle twice if they want to go. Then we had our first Tank Bowl. So we had Las Vegas versus Orlando in this game. There's a lot to read about it. This was our first Tank Bowl. Paxton Lynch was benched. Luis Perez is his own coach out there. He looked completely, self-sustainable. He was telling people where to go this way, calling his own plays, and he was calling good plays too. Like they were getting done. Quentin Normandy was accused of cheating, selling secrets, selling the playbook to other teams. None of that stuck on his record, so he was reinstated. And the Guardians, good thing they did. Paxton Lynch was benched, as I already said. Normandy came out. He was really, really, really good on the night. And then he went 27 completions for 303 yards. He averaged 10.2 yards per throw, which is really good. He had 2 touchdowns, a run on the ground by Orlando, and they had 86 yards rushing. They averaged 3.4 yards per carry, 3 TFLs. Defensively is just the problem for both of these teams. Orlando, for the first time, looked like they had a competent offense. Quentin Normandy was out there. He was calling plays as the most points they've ever scored. Granted, it was against the worst team in the league defensively. I mean, both of these are the worst team in the league. So there's a lot that we can look into this game, a lot that we can gather, a lot of knowledge. But these are the 2 worst teams in the league. If I am Terrell Buckley, you need to start looking for a new job. It's not looking good right now. We also had Quentin Flowers. For those of you that don't remember, he was the Las Vegas Vipers quarterback that they like to use. A lot of the fans loved him. They were always chanting, "We want Flowers." He's on the team. We saw him just a quick, brief blip. He was going for an extra point or something. All in all, Quentin Normandy is probably going to be Orlando's quarterback from here on out, because Paxton Lynch just had nothing going for him. Then we got to the most boring game of the season, which is San Antonio versus Dallas. This is at San Antonio. A massive attendance drop from 24,000 to 13,000. I think they had sold more tickets than that, but it was just an awkward time frame. Sunday night's not the best because you got work in the morning on Mondays. San Antonio had a better football team. Jack Cohn, I had been defending for a little bit, calling his offensive line the problem. I wouldn't say that his offensive line isn't the problem, but Jack Cohn, I think, is a contributing factor to the lack of success in San Antonio. Kyle Sloter looked okay. I think it's the offense that Bob Stoops is running right now. It's a very run-first offense, and it's not a good run-first offense. So, he had a more quiet night on the night. Nothing really crazy. It was 10-12. One interception by Reed Sinnett late, but he got injured. So, it was just a bad night overall. Number 1 in the power rankings, I have DC. It's pretty simple there. DC is the better team over Houston because Houston got shut down when it comes to offensively. And I've seen things in Houston that insinuated, you pop Houston in the mouth and their offense struggles. I've seen that in the weeks beforehand. So maybe they change up their offensive scheme. I'm not a big proponent of the air raid offenses personally. Number 3, I have St. Louis. The reason I have St. Louis at number 3 is they're still a good team. They've put up 2 great games against DC, throwing an interception in one and just failing to convert a 4th and 15 on the other. All in all, I think this team they get a little behind, but A.J. McCarron is playing consistently throughout the games. Hakeem Butler, I've seen massive improvements on him. He went from not being able to catch a pass to now he's one of the more dominant wide receivers in this game. Number 4, it's easy for me. We've got not St. Louis. We got Seattle at number 4. They have lost to both St. Louis and DC, and really, if they don't fix the closing problems, closing out a game, they're not going to make it to the playoffs. But I have seen improvements. The teams that they won against, being Houston and the Vipers and the Brahmas. All in all, I think they just need a little bit more Number 5, I had the Renegades. It's slow offense. Number 6, I have the Brahmas. Still same thing, slow offense. Number 7, I still have the Vipers. But we're going to have the Brahmas-Vipers game here soon in the coming weeks, so those two might get swapped around. The Vipers underneath Brett Huntley, they look okay, but underneath Luis Perez, that is where I think this team thrives. They've scored more points with Luis than with Huntley. Defensively is where their problems lie, which is weird because their coach was a cornerback, but they've got a bad secondary and a bad line. Orlando is just bad in general. Predictions, I went 75%, 3-4, so I'm 75% on the whole season so far. I've got the Seattle Dragons versus Orlando. That's easy. Seattle wins. The high parade offense. Orlando's bad defense. Maybe with Quentin Normandy, we might see something, but I'd put my money on Seattle. The Renegades versus the Brahmas. It's a back-to-back game. This time they're going to be in Dallas for this game. It depends on who the Brahmas are rolling out, but I think Kyle Sloter still has it. If the Brahmas figure out what their offense consists of in this week, then easy Brahma win, but I don't know if they will because Reed Sinnett has been hurt and Jack Cohn is not the answer. Battlehawks versus Vegas. That's easy for me. Battlehawks are going to beat Vegas. It's a much more consistent team, and they've got a good defense. Now, they did let up a lot of run yards against DC, but I would say that's more of a DC dominance over the Battlehawks' bad defense. So, all in all, I think Battlehawks are going to win that. Put your money there if I were you. Finally, the last game I have is DC versus Houston. I'm putting DC over Houston for the simple fact that DC is able to really close out games well, and they're able to stay in these dogfight trenches. From what I've seen from Houston, they struggle more when it's a more, close game. Both teams are doing well offensively. All in all, Houston just needs to clear up some of the turnovers. Brandon Silvers, I'll say this, wasn't my first pick, and he fumbled, I think, twice in that game. But all in all, Houston, I think you're still a top team, and they've pretty much got a playoff spot secured at this point. They just need to beat Dallas and San Antonio one more time, and they're in, which I think is more than feasible. So that's all I have for you today in the prediction-wise. Things are starting to heat up in the North Division. Meanwhile, the South Division, it looks pretty weak. If I'm Arlington, I'd be searching for a new offensive coordinator. I think that Dallas has a lot of weapons that they can use on the offensive air attack. However, I just don't think that they're utilizing those weapons correctly. So, yeah, that's all I got for you today. And, go live your life. Live the dream. Watch some XFL, why don't you? Here's the DC Defenders Code of Conduct if you're going to a DC game, just so you remember. We don't want to have the beer snake taken away from us, so this is a public service announcement for y'all. And that's about all I have for you today. We're going to throw out a couple of videos and a little bit of a blitzkrieg type thing, so be ready for that. And shoot, guys, we are only 35 subscribers away from 100. So let's try to blitz that. All right. So if you're watching the video, I think like my watching people that watch, and then those that are not, those who are and those who aren't subscribed. It's like 1% subscribed and something like that. So let's boost those numbers for YouTube analytics, and then we'll get these videos out there a little further. But thanks for your time. I love you. Bye bye.